Speed Channel presents a special Friday the 13th final practice here from Richmond International Raceway for Saturday night's American Revolution 400. And there's a whole lot of cars at the end of pit road as final practice has already begun. And the editor of Speedway Illustrated, Dr. Dick Berggren, is there with breaking news. Dick?
And we start with a bit of the bizarre here at Richmond International this afternoon, Matt. You ever put your kids into a timeout where they did something you didn't like or didn't do something they were supposed to do? NASCAR has just put 11 teams in timeout in this one and only practice session of the race weekend. The teams were late for inspection last weekend in Darlington. NASCAR doesn't like that. NASCAR wants their teams to be on time. And so to get their attention, they put them in this long line here, 11 of them. And most of them are going to have to sit here for 15 minutes, drivers sitting in the car, strapped in, just sitting, thinking about the business of making it to the inspection line on time, except Jeff Gordon, car 24. He has a 30-minute timeout. Let's go upstairs.
Hello, everyone. Matt Yoakum alongside Larry McReynolds and three-time NASCAR Next Cup Series champion, Darrell Waltrip. Now, who does this impact the most? Many go, well, you've got the top two guys in points sitting on pit road, but what about other guys that desperately need this practice?
Well, I think the guy that it impacts the most, remember, this is final practice. This is also the first practice. This is the only practice these teams will get. This is an impound race. They're trying to get ready to qualify. They're trying to get ready to race. And when I look at that list, all of those guys except Robbie Gordon, the 7 car, they're locked into this show. They will race tomorrow night. Robbie Gordon has to qualify on time. He's missed the last 2 races, so to me, he probably is impacted the most by this penalty.
Wrong, Larry. Crew chief is impacted the most because he is catching heck from that driver right now, and probably from everybody that he works around him, because you know whose responsibility is to get it through, get the car through inspection. And I know that the impound has created some issues for these guys, but still, you know, two-thirds of the other guys got through on time. How come you didn't? So that'd be the question I'd have.
Now, missing from that list are 2 other drivers, Rusty Wallace and Tony Stewart. They're not on the racetrack yet because they have failed to sign in, so they're not going to be allowed on the racetrack until they go to the big white trailer.
A lot of issues going on.
There's a lot of these.
Ever happen to you? About 8 or 10, every 8 or 10 races, NASCAR has to get, you know, a little disciplinary action here. The kids get a little rowdy, they get out of hand, and you got to get them back in line, and that's kind of like a wake-up call for a lot of these guys.
They never put you back in line or put you in timeout, did they?
Oh, I've had many a conversation. I've been sitting. They didn't usually let me sit at the end of pit road. I usually had to sit in the truck and wait.
But you know,
I get that long wait they always talked about.
Or a skyhook, right? But I did tour team. You see him sitting there behind his teammate Jimmy Johnson. And what happened, we had to impound at Darlington. Those guys only got 2 hours of practice. Actually, I think only an hour and a half. And like they told me, they said, Larry, when that practice ended, we were not in good shape. We had to make chassis decisions. We were trying to get ready to qualify. Plus, we were trying to do our race day checklist. We knew we were going to be penalized, but like he said, we'll worry about Richmond next week. We need to worry about Darlington now. It obviously paid off because they finished second in the race.
And he's got about 25 more minutes to sit in that race car.
And that will seem probably about like an hour and 25 minutes.
He's got his cell phone in there. He's probably calling around, doing some deals.
He's probably got his PDA. He's
not wasting 30 minutes, I can promise you that.
Listening to his iPod.
He's probably got his iPod. He's having.
You know, Jimmy probably has his.
Yep.
Probably has some Kid Rock or something.
I bet you they're talking to each other.
A good possibility. They might just be. You know, they talk to each other a lot during cautions.
Yeah.
What do you think that conversation's like today?
Well, why don't we see what Jeff Hammond, what he has to talk about?
Ought to be interesting.
Let's go downstairs again to Jeff Hammond. Jeff?
Well, guys, you got to remember, it is Friday the 13th, and a lot of weird things are probably going to happen before the day's all said and done. When you talk about timeouts, a team that probably doesn't want to be putting timeout, and a lot of guys would like to be seen putting timeout, happens to be Greg Biffle, this number 16 car. So far, these guys have been on a roll. 4 wins in the last 11 starts, dating back to the Homestead victory last year. 3 wins this year, but they've also led more laps, more miles, more times than anybody else this season, and have climbed to 3rd in the points. These guys are excited to be coming to Richmond, a place where Greg loves to race. It takes him back to his short track roots, and he told me before the start of this practice session, he's already been on the track in his Busch car. He says the track's not quite like he was here earlier when he tested, but he really likes the way he thinks his National Guard car is going to feel when he takes it out. He's already been out once. He was in the top 10. Brought it back in, making a few adjustments here. The crew's working on the front end, trying to get the skirt down just a little bit. But he is really one of the guys everybody's looking toward right now, because this team has been strong so far this season.
And D, he has what everybody wants, the big mo.
Oh, yeah, he's got it going on. And I tell you, last week, Ryan Newman handed him that one. There's no question about it. But he had the best car all night long, and he attacked that racetrack. And that's what I like about that dude right there. I said last week he's a wheel man, and that's exactly what he is.
And I tell you what, those guys, they've been solid in qualifying, impound or non-impound races. They've started in the top 10, 8 races out of 10 this year.
6 career wins. Greg Biffle now out of timeout. Tony Stewart finally on the racetrack. 12 starts here at Richmond, and he's raced just about every kind of car here. USAC open wheel cars, IRL cars, you name it, Busch, trucks.
And won.
And won.
That's right.
And D, we talked about it. Steve talked about it earlier on NASCAR Live. Many consider this the best all-around racetrack because the key word,
race. They race here. You know, you go to Bristol, you survive. You go to Martinsville, and it's, you know, it's 2 long straightaways with those tight turns. Hard to race there. Here, man, you can get it. You can go all over the place. You can go high, you can go low. You can be 3 wide down the front, big sweeping turns. I think the drivers like racing here because you can race.
It's almost like the perfect shape with the perfect amount of degree of banking in the corners.
So, Dick, while the 24, the 48, and a host of others are sitting in timeout, Dale Earnhardt Jr.'s down there, what is Gordon doing?
Well, Jeff Probst has been listening to him on the radio, Matty, and it's been really an interesting conversation. And early on, about as soon as he got here, Gordon said that they're going to have to really watch this business of when they get into the inspection line. Something like this can really get your attention. And then as our camera showed up, Gordon keyed the radio and he said, you know, seeing this happen, he just knew there was going to be a TV camera around soon. And then they started talking about their strategy for what they have left. They have an hour and a half left to practice, and they're talking about how many laps they're going to run in that practice session, where they want to try to run them, whether they want to try qualifying setups with the nose taped up, or whether they want to run the nose open and that sort of thing. Jimmy Johnson, who's parked right in front of him, is hearing where other people are running on the racetrack and how they're running on the racetrack. So it started out a little bit of unhappiness about being down here, but they've got their minds on the job at hand, and that's practicing so they can turn a good qualifying lap and race well tomorrow night.
And Dick, you can see that Jeff's got the nose open like he's going to race that car Saturday night. He's going out and make some race runs first. Not a lot of tape on the grill. Got the brake ducts open. So he's not going out for a qualifying run initially. He's going to go out and see how it feels and probably go to a race set or a qualifying setup a little bit later on. But right now he's got pretty much a race package under the car, looks like.
And Darrell, brakes, this racetrack here, they're probably more important here, or can get in trouble more so here than even at Martinsville, because you don't have that low gear to slow you down. You're pulling about a 514 gear, long straightaways, a lot of speed going in the corners. You can get in trouble here with brakes.
I actually even read where Goodyear said they are a little bit concerned about heat, because you will use a lot more brake because of the higher gear that they're going to run here this weekend. And they're going to be monitoring that real closely, because you say, why? Well, brake heat and a lot of camber here can bust the bead on the tire and cause some tire problems.
You know, part of this pit road rolls down into turn 1, and a lot of crew chiefs, they'll tell their driver, look, your rotors are looking too hot, because this is a night race. Those rotors are just bright red when they're over using the brakes. They'll say, look, take it a little easier. And sometimes, like Rusty Walsh will say, how are my brakes looking? Do you think I'm being too aggressive?
Yeah, they even the tire changers, they can tell. They go back and report to the crew chief, you know, got a lot of brake dust coming off that right front. And that's more information the crew chief can feed to the driver.
Well, it is going to be a full weekend of racing here. 2 night races back-to-back in Richmond. Continues on later today, 4:30 Eastern, NASCAR Busch Series qualifying on speed, then followed by Nextel Cup qualifying 6 p.m. and then at 7:30 NASCAR Busch Series action. Tomorrow, NASCAR this morning, 5:30 p.m. Eastern on speed. Then over on FX, the Chevy American Revolution 400, 7 p.m. And then John Roberts and the gang, NASCAR Victory Lane to close out your weekend of racing, 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific.
Looks like all 11 cars have now made it to the penalty box. Robbie Gordon was the last one, so his clock just started on that 7 car.
He's late for timeout.
He's in real trouble.
Speed Channel's coverage of NASCAR Nextel Cup Happy Hour, live from the Richmond International Raceway, is brought to you by Nextel. helping NASCAR's groups get things done. NASCAR Nextel, partners in speed, and by Chevy, the defending manufacturer's champion. The revolution races on. So far during this final practice session,
look, the
28 race
penalty
cars.
box has a few less cars because they just finally released Scott Riggs, Michael Waltrip, Casey Mears, Jimmy Johnson, and Carl Edwards. You see Jimmy Johnson here in the 48 car out there on the racetrack. There goes Casey Mears. So starting to release some of these guys now that were there at the beginning of practice that only had the 15-minute penalty.
Now, they got 2 hours of practice, so they'll be all right.
He's halfway, Jeff Gordon.
detention.
16 minutes down, 14 to go.
Takes me back to 7th grade. The 48 car on the racetrack now. One short track career victory in Nextel Cup, Martinsville last fall. Coming up on Scott Riggs. Different paint scheme this weekend. Some unique colors there, D.
Yeah, I like that the sponsor is an air freshener. And I was reading about it, and they said that they figured out that if you can pipe or pump pine scent into the cockpit of a race car, it'll make the driver be a little bit calmer. It's soothing. And they're working on doing that.
Is that kind of like when you see people, they hang like a Christmas tree from the mirror?
Yeah, that thing.
There's a lot of people that could use that in Charlotte on I-77 in rush hour.
Yeah, I bet.
I used to hang those in my car, but they wouldn't last the 2 years I would hang them in there.
Well, last week, Kurt Busch took a hit in the points, and we'll show you why at Darlington. The 24 car right behind, but the 97 loses it, hits the inside wall, and that's where his problems began. Spent a lot of time in the garage, and that's where the 97 car is right now, Jeff Hammond.
Matt, what's going on with Kurt Busch and this number 97 team? It's a little bit like what happened last week, and they're trying real hard to put that behind them. They had some problems on the track, had some problems afterwards with NASCAR, and Kurt told me, he said, hey, we got everything resolved. We're getting focused to try to get back on track to defend our championship this year. Right now, he made a few laps early on in this practice session, said the car was too loose. Jimmy Finnick and the crew brought the car back to the garage area. They changed the right front A-frame, said the car was turning in way too good and cutting through the middle. He also said that when they looking at the racetrack compared to the last time he was here, it is definitely different. The sealer is worn off. It doesn't have the grip of the track that it had before, so they're having to make those types of adjustments to make the car a little bit more driver friendly. And he looked at me with a big grin on his face. He said, but we're going to have fun here come Saturday night.
8 career starts at Richmond, only one top 10 finish, but look back to Monday night, Larry Mack. Big money.
These guys had fun on Monday night in the National Pit Crew Championship powered by Tyson up at the pit school. 4 rounds, 37 teams competed. The 97 group went through all 4 rounds without any penalties. They went to head-to-head in the final round against Ray Evernham's number 19 team. So Mark Full, Scott Ward, Scott Riddell, Doug Newell, Jim Gaudette, Kevin Gilman, Jason Binger, they walked away with the $100,000 first prize.
They almost picked up a $500,000 bonus.
Yeah, we had 4 teams that went into the bonus round. We had the 97 team, the 19 team, the 01 team, and the 16 team of Greg Biffle. They had to better the best time throughout all the competition by 1 second. They had to go at 4 tires and that fuel at 14.437. The front tire changer in group, they did it. They basically was down to a 14.12 with no penalties, but the rear was at a 14.9. So they came up just a little short on that $500,000.
And there's Scott Radel right there. Jackman on the 97 team.
Great night for those guys.
A great night 1 year ago for Dale Earnhardt Jr., driver 8. Seems like, Darrell, the tracks where aero and motor hasn't been the most important piece of the pie, Junior has excelled. You think about the Phoenixes, you think about here.
Yeah, well, you think about tracks where a driver can make a difference. And we know he's a great driver, and you don't always have to have. His dad was the best I ever saw at taking a not a very fast race car and getting more out of it than anybody I ever knew. Matter of fact, Dale was the best. He was at his best when his car wasn't all that great. He made up a lot of difference, and I think Dale Jr. is doing that right now.
The image of Richmond that I will always remember, After that pit stop
please.
when he... No. Not that. We'll talk about that later. But when Dale undid his belts, got up on the windowsill and started cleaning his own windshield because they hadn't cleaned it.
Yeah, no, he ran through some mud. Somebody threw mud up on the car and on the windshield, and he got up on the window and cleaned it. That was pretty cool.
The penalty clock for Jeff Gordon continues to wind down. He's in timeout. 18, almost 19 minutes so far here in Richmond. Coming up next on Speed, stay tuned for NASCAR Beyond the Wheel. Full day of NASCAR right here on Speed Channel. And by the way, that's 607 on your DirecTV.
Okay. It is. Yes, it is, 607. And we'll be on, what we got on trackside tonight? We got
Robbie Gordon. We talked about him a while ago. And we also have Dave Blaney and David Strimmy out of the Busch Series.
And you can ask Robbie Gordon, what was he doing on pit road while he had to wait for that clock to tick off to get out of the pit?
I think it's just, they said Gordon, and he thought it was him because he's always, they're always saying something about Gordon, so he just pulled over there.
We're down to 2 cars, though. Jeff Gordon has about 5.5 minutes left, and Robbie Gordon, he only had a 15-minute penalty, but he was late getting to pit road, so he should be close as well.
And on the racetrack now, the 42 car. Your Fast Five so far during this final practice session. No surprise, Ryan Newman in his Dodge, followed by Ricky Rudd, former winner here in the Wood Brothers Ford. Travis Kvapil, Kurt Busch, Rusty Wallace, Casey Kane 6, Tony Stewart 7, Mark Martin 8th, Jeff Green, the Petty Dodge 9th, and rounding out your top 10 DW, Jeff Burton.
Yeah, and that's not maybe necessarily how they're going to qualify because...
this is an impound race, so a lot of different agendas.
On a different agenda, like we saw Jeff Gordon's car. He's pretty much in race configuration right now. Some of these guys will go out and qualify and trim and go to race configuration maybe later on.
If you were still racing, would you love this kind of format, or would you prefer the old format?
No, I think when you're a well-prepared team with a lot of resources, like Roush and Hendrick, for instance, you don't care what the circumstances are. You know that you've got whatever it takes to be successful. I would like this, actually. I like this weekend the best. We're going to impound today and race tomorrow.
Exactly. It's a 2-day show.
Yeah, it's that impounding on Friday and not racing until Sunday. That's what's kind of aggravating.
And look at Jamie McMurray, the last 3 races. He's climbed from 15th in the championship standings up to 8th. Just missed getting in the chase here last fall.
And Daryl, the most amazing thing, now Jamie is just in his 3rd full season in Nextel Cup. And at Darlington, that was his 88th race. He topped $10 million in career winnings. Can you believe that?
Why are you telling me that?
I thought you'd like to know that.
I raced 30 years and made $20 million. No, I don't want to hear that. I'm going to come back out of retirement and go run for Rookie of the Year.
And by the way, for those scoring at home, Robbie G has now left pit road. He's been given the green light. Now we're just waiting for Super G to finish his time, and let's go down to Jeff Hammond.
Matt, we know how hard these teams work, and a lot of times they talk about how much business is going on. There's not a lot of time for fun. If you look on the toolbox of the 38 crew of Robert Yates Racing, you'll see a picture. Has anyone smiled at you today? And they got a picture up there, and they've got the number 20 car crew chief up there, or car chief that is, and they were making fun of one another. Now, can you imagine that? These teams making fun of one another. Tony Stewart came in, and he was basically just about ready to fall out of the race car, even though he strapped in, because when he saw the picture, he just started beating on the steering wheel and making comments about it. So these guys may be under a lot of pressure to make the right decisions, but they still know how to have fun.
Now, the guy they were talking about, Larry Mack, Scott Deal, the car chief, longtime car chief at the 20 team. Always a comedian, always joking around. You saw him mugging for the camera there.
But these guys, they have to have fun. They race 38 races in 41 weeks. And then when they're not racing, they're testing. If they're not testing, they're in the wind tunnel. So you have to have some fun.
I tell you how bad it is. We used to have the Christmas party at the shop. Yeah, bring your families on over. We'll have a Christmas party and dinner here.
Because we're preparing the Daytona cars.
Right.
A little known fact about Scott Deal, as they're getting ready to let Jeff Gordon go off pit road to finish his detention time. Scott Deal actually used to be a short track racer up in Michigan, and him and Tim Fedewa, together, they shared a race car. Timmy would run on Friday, Scott would run on Saturday, and then I think Scott realized it probably would be better if he just wrenched on the car and Timmy drove.
But that's good experience, though. He drove the car. I think having some driving experience when you're in a role like that, crew chief or a car chief, helps you relate to what the driver's telling you. When he says my pedals are wrong or my steering wheel needs to be moved or my seat's uncomfortable, if you've driven, you know the importance of fixing that for the driver.
Dale Earnhardt Jr. on the racetrack, logging laps. Let's go back down to Dick Berggren.
Well, Matty, it's a lonely, lonely place down here on pit road. Just Jeff Gordon and one official standing in front of him. The radio chatter stopped about 15 or 20 minutes ago. Gordon has said nothing. But what a wonderful opportunity for the race fans who have lined up on pit road with their cameras. Usually you can't get this close to a Nextel Cup car, but just about everybody here has got a camera as they're getting ready to let Gordon go. They've told him to fire the engine. And these folks have been sitting here, and they can't quite believe their good fortune that they've been that close to get pictures of Gordon and actually see him sitting behind the wheel, feeling pretty grumpy, I would say.
And usually, D, that car is so fast, when you take a picture, those flames are just one big, smear or whatever on there.
Yeah, all those people sitting down there, not only is he sitting there kind of annoyed that he has to wait 30 minutes, but then people hollering at him, Hey, Jeff, why don't you get out and sign some autographs?
The hay people.
Yeah.
But this is a proven car here. This is the same car that he won with at Martinsville last month. So I'm sure they'll sort through a little bit of setup. But you know what? They actually changed the setup that they started this practice with because they figured out they're going to lose 30 minutes of practice. So I think they had some things they wanted to try in the beginning. They pretty much aborted that and went pretty much to a known setup.
Basically calling an audible and changing your plan a little bit. Most laps run so far during this final practice session. The guy who won the race here last fall bumped himself into the chase, Jeremy Mayfield, followed by Ryan Newman out of the Penske South camp.
It seems like somebody always, Larry, hits the magic setup here. Think about Joe Nemechek, dominated this race in the 25 car. Last year, Jeremy had such an awesome car to win this race. We've seen Rusty do it. We've seen Jeff do it. Seems like somebody always gets a little bit better setup than the other guys.
And I think you're right. And, you were talking about this being the perfect impound weekend. I think another thing about this 2-hour practice, as you well know, DW, this is kind of a rhythm racetrack. I think the more laps that you can log here, the more you get into the rhythm that you need to be in.
Yeah, this is a track that you can literally overdrive. You can just really, really drive down into turn 1 much further than you need to and really upset the race car. Same way with getting into 3. Running into 3 hard and having to use a lot of brake just upsets the car. So you got to find your marks and then you got to hit them.
Tony Stewart's run 8 laps during this final practice session, and there's, looks like Scott Deal on a bad day. Championship winning car chief, there he is. A Uper from Michigan, Scott Deal. Play the official fantasy games of Speed Channel for your shot at winning $10,000 starting May 21st. It's the All-Star Challenge. Log on to speedtv.com now for official rules and play the All-Star Challenge. And D, when you talk about different paint schemes, starts out a little bit purple and then it goes blue. Bobby Labonte.
I don't think I've ever seen a car painted. I don't think I quite. What are those colors?
Easter has already taken place.
Yep.
It'll definitely show up, I think, at night.
It looks like something that me and my crowd from Owensboro might have done about 40 years ago.
You think alcohol would have been involved?
Yeah.
Lacquer thinner, at least.
I'm going to tell you what, though, Bobby Labonte, he's been awfully strong here. He's finished in the top 6 in 3 of the last 4 races here. So for the group that's marred back in 33rd in points, good place they could kind of up that point situation just a little bit.
And they need something good to happen and happen fast.
Yes, they do. They've used all their mulligans up.
Definitely. Let's go downstairs to Dick Berggren.
Well, the garage is full right now, Matty. Virtually every car in our area is in the garage. They've all been out and run a few laps. Now it's time to make the adjustments and then try to get things squared away. Of the people we have been listening to, the one with the most trouble so far, car 99, Carl Edwards, who has a vibration. He has had vibration problems all the way through this practice session. Jeff Hammond.
Dick, DW and Larry have been talking about what these drivers need to do here at Richmond to go quick, hit their marks, get the car up underneath them. For Dale Earnhardt Jr., the car is a lot better this last time out, but he's still not quite right. There's a bump going down into turn 1 that has given a lot of these drivers a fit early in his practice session. Dale Earnhardt Jr. no different. They're changing the right front spring as well as the right rear spring on this number 8 car to try to get him over that hump so he can get down in the racetrack and get back to the throttle and be able to drive off of turn number 2.
Jeff and Mike, I think you'll back me up. When you have lack of grip, tires may be a little too hard or not just enough grip in the racetrack itself, bumps and things of that nature that are characteristic of a racetrack are more aggravating than they are when you got good soft tires and a good car that's sucked down to the track.
Now, Dean, when you take a look at the shot down in turn 4 as the cars come up off the corner, you can already see the black rubber working into the racetrack.
Yeah, the guys are telling me that tested up here that as long as you stay in this part right here, you're okay. That's what we call the groove. But when you get up in here, what they found from testing was these tires are wearing. They're getting a lot of rubber, a lot of debris, a lot of sand, a lot of dirt. And if you get out of the groove right now, you're in big trouble.
You know, ever since the season started, all the testing went on back in January at Daytona, Fontana, and Las Vegas. This is probably the next place that most of the teams tested. It sounded like about a third to a half of the Busch teams, as well as the Nextel Cup teams, came up here and tested.
I just get the impression that the tires are pretty hard for this track right now.
21 teams came up to test here at the Richmond International Raceway. So far, the fastest driver during this final practice session is the Rocket. Nextel Cup final practice live from Richmond. Now, the best 10-lap average thus far, Newman leads the way like he does on the scoring monitor, 125.53 miles per hour. But Casey Mears up there as well there.
Yeah, now he's only 15th quickest as far as a single lap, but you see him second in the 10-lap average, which is what most of these guys are working on right now. But when you're like Ryan Newman and you have the fastest lap and you have the fastest 10-lap average, he's ran a total of 44 laps in this practice session, not all at one time, but Carl looks pretty good as far as a fast lap and long runs as well.
Yeah, he finished second here both races last year, so it's not a bad racetrack for him.
18 races have passed since his last Nextel Cup Series victory. That was at Dover, September 2004, as he makes his way back in the garage.
Well, I know that after last week, they feel like that one got away for sure.
The 99, Carl Edwards with Roundup colors on his Ford this week.
Yeah, I've been using a little Roundup at the house.
It's that time of year.
You got it.
Right now, Carl Edwards is 35th quickest, but as you heard our guys down in the garage here talking, fighting a vibration right now that they're trying to solve.
You know, and sometimes it can be brakes. You use so much brake here. If you go out there and get a bunch of get your rotors warped, one of your rotors warped up a little bit, that can drive you crazy trying to find it.
Last year at this race, during final practice, I was down in the garage, and a rookie driver kept having the vibration problems. We're watching Dale Earnhardt Jr., currently 9th on the racetrack, on board now. He kept saying, I've got a vibration. He went back out, came back in, got a vibration. Finally, they said to him, is your foot on the brake? As he was sitting in the garage stall, and those pads were up against the rotor, leaving that residue.
Yeah.
And he was warping the brakes, and that's where he's getting the vibration.
Yeah,